Today on Mother Mayhem.
The more I do this work with daughters, the more I think we've gotten the order of all of this backwards. I don't think we can think ourselves into worthiness. I think we have to experience our way into it. Welcome back to Mother Mayhem, the podcast for daughters of narcissistic and emotionally limited mothers. I'm your host, Heather Gray. And today, daughters, I want to talk to you about the role that permission has in your healing. Oftentimes, you're going to hear me say something like, if you need a permission slip signed, hand it right over. I've got you. And now we know that is pithy and trite. And I'd also like to think that it feels pretty good to hear, because I sure as heck think it feels pretty good to say, but also I think it can be really hard to do. Normally in the healing conversations, you hear me telling you things like check in with your nervous system, see what feels possible or what you have capacity for. And you've heard me tell you that if to check in on your preferences and what feels real and true for you. Those are the most important tenets of mayhem to me and for me. I believe in them to my bones, and I'm never going to stop talking about them. But also, I think there's a bridge we need to cross together, my friends, and I'm hoping that perhaps today's conversation might just very well become that bridge. First of all, healing helps you make sense of yourself to yourself. If I was only allowed one goal for this show, I would want it to be that. I want you to feel like you make sense to yourselves, that you know why you're feeling this way, why the things that are hard for you are hard for you, and that the problem was never, ever you. There's never been anything wrong with you, and you've never been too much. Once you get through that first wave of healing, you come to know yourself more, what you like, what you don't, what feels good, what doesn't. And it's tempting in that moment to say to yourselves, okay, now just stay. Don't move. I know the problem isn't me. I know myself more. Maybe I even like myself a little bit more. So can we please just be done? Unfortunately, no, not so much. Because healing doesn't just happen inside of you. You've already heard me say that it happens inside of relationships, but also, my friends, healing happens inside of your life, how you live in it and how you use what you've learned in your healing to have a life closer to the one by your own design. Now, I got a note this week in my email from a daughter who loves to sing. My kind of daughter right there. She didn't want to have her story featured on the show, but she did give me permission to share our email exchange with all of you. She shared with me that she wasn't able to find the courage to say yes to joining her church choir because she would need help with childcare in order to be able to make the rehearsals. And she couldn't get out of her own way and ask anyone for something as quote unquote as big as regularly watching her kid. She knew it was daughter brain, and she could even say that if anyone had asked her to watch their kid for a couple of hours a week so they could do something they loved, she would want to say yes. But she couldn't do it for herself, even though she wanted to, because she really, really wanted to sing. I wanted to share with you what I said to her, because even as I was typing it, I knew I wasn't just typing it to her. I was typing it for all of you. All of you need to hear this. So here goes. Oh, sister, I feel this so hard. You've taken yourself as far as you can by yourself. You know what you want and what's important to you, and you know why it matters. And now you are at the part where it's time to really show up for yourself. Say what you want out loud and involve other people. For you daughters, you all get pretty good at the healing parts that just involve you. You can show up for yourselves, listen to the podcasts, go to therapy, read the books, do the journals, and learn all the things. But as soon as someone else needs to be invited inside of that equation, you freeze. Because of course you do. You haven't done this part before. You haven't asked for help or accepted help or managed the vulnerability that comes when you're showing up for the life you want or for the things that are important to you. This feels hard and strange because it is hard and strange. You've never done this before, but also I want to point something out. You didn't say, I don't have anyone to ask. You said, I can't get myself to ask. And those are two very different things. The easy answer to this one, you've all heard me say before. Just think of the other person and what it might be like for them to be able to say yes to you, to be able to help you with something you love. What a cool thing that would be to be able to do that for you. We so often assume that anyone helping us is burdened by the ask. But I can think of so many times when I've been asked to help with something, and I am positively delighted to be able to have been asked and also to be able to do it. You daughters are used to thinking of yourselves as too much and burdensome, but I promise you that for the right people, it really isn't that hard to help you, and you really aren't too much. It might take you a while to get there, but the only way you're going to get there is if you take a chance and you ask and you show up for yourself. But here's what I think you might need in order to be able to get there: permission. You need to give yourself permission to do this differently, to share yourself, to be vulnerable, and to ask. It is hard to ask for help after childhoods and lives where you have been made to feel wrong for asking. But this is not that. Now is not then. You know what you want, what you need, and it is so very close. I think it's time to give yourself permission, sister. I would love for you to sign that slip for yourself because I think it would be so powerful. But if you need me to do it, here you go. It is okay to ask for help. It is okay to get help for something you only want and don't actually need. You get to ask for help even when it isn't an emergency or a crisis. You get to ask for help so you can sing. There you go. Signed, sealed, delivered. Now, you guys, I thought about this exchange for days after, and I was rooting so hard for her. I hope she's asked by now, and I hope she received an easy yes. And I hope she's singing to the rafters. But this conversation about permission really stuck with me. Since talking to her, here's what I've also been thinking about. What can we do as a community, or what can I offer as your podcast host that can help make giving ourselves permission more possible? We don't need to rabbit hole this thing to understand why giving yourselves permission is harder for daughters, but what we can work on together so that giving yourselves permission is a smaller hurdle. And here's what I think. I think giving yourself permission is actually something you practice. It's never going to be one big brave moment where you suddenly wake up believing you deserve the life you want. I think it's something you build, one small decision at a time. So, what does a daughter need to do in order to believe that they have permission? First, I think you have to start talking to yourself differently. You have spent years hearing other voices tell you what is acceptable, what is selfish, what's too much, what's asking too much, what's worthy, what isn't. Healing asks you to begin introducing a new voice to that conversation, your voice. Sometimes that voice is going to be as simple as saying, it's okay to do this. You deserve this. You're allowed to ask. You're allowed to want this. And yeah, I get it. It might feel awkward at first, but so did everything else you've been learning to do while you've been healing. I also think you have to get curious about the old rules that you find yourself still living by. These are the rules you didn't even necessarily choose, but you somehow inherited them anyway. And those rules might sound something like, don't inconvenience anyone. Don't ask too much. Don't take up space. Don't eat anything. Don't disappoint anyone. And when you notice one of those rules, ask yourself, do I still want this rule running my life. Because just because it kept you safe once doesn't mean it deserves a permanent place in your future. I think you also have to stop waiting until something feels comfortable before you do it. Feelings like guilt, anxiety, discomfort, they're not always danger signs or 5 alarm fires that immediately need to be put out. This is just kind of how your nervous systems have learned to do something new. If you all end up waiting to ask for help until it feels completely comfortable, you all may be waiting a very long time. You've heard every single self help guru out there say it, right? And you probably honestly heard me say it a couple of times too. But sisters, it's cliche because it's true. Oftentimes, you, my friends, are just gonna have to fucking do it scared while your stomach hurts, while there's vomit in your mouth, because uncomfortable does not always mean unsafe. Obviously, now, if you're attempting to ask your moms for help, abort mission immediately. Listen to your bodies because your bodies are telling you the truth. But with everyone else, your bodies are reacting to the idea of doing this new thing it has never done before, and it is not going to stop feeling strange until you get your reps in of doing it on repeat. And then, you guys, I think this becomes about collecting the evidence. I think every time you do one of these things that daughter brain tells you not to do, asking for help, saying no, telling someone what you want, letting someone show up for you, you are running a little experiment. You're asking yourself, what actually happens if I do this? Sometimes it won't go the way you hoped. Let's just be honest about that, because that's life. But I think a lot of the time you're going to find that the catastrophe your daughter brain was predicting never actually arrives. Someone says yes, or they say no, and it turns out you're able to survive that. Or you ask for the favor and realize that the other person was actually quite happy to be able to help. Maybe you take the class and you join the choir and you book the trip and you spend the money and you realize you didn't die from it. It didn't kill you. And dare we hope, maybe you even managed to have a nice time. I think that is how we start believing that we have permission. You do not have to earn every single good thing that comes your way. And your house does not have to be on fire in order for you to be able to ask for help. Wanting something can be reason enough to ask. That is the part of healing when you trust yourself enough to try something that feels just a little bit uncomfortable, and then pay attention to what actually happened instead of assuming that that old story was right. Now, sitting here at my desk over here, I happen to have a whole bunch of permission slips, and I'm going to need you guys to start signing them. Here we go. I am allowed to not answer this text the second it comes in. If you're anything like me, daughter brain's already writing the story. They're going to think I'm mad. They're going to think I'm ignoring them. They're going to think something's wrong. Notice how quickly someone else's text becomes your responsibility. It probably isn't. Let the text sit for 10 minutes. Let it sit for an hour. Let it sit till the next day. Notice what comes up for you. And that right there is the practice. Okay, your next permission slip. I am allowed to be misunderstood. You guys, I need this one tattooed on my forehead. I'm hoping it's not just me. I know this urge so well. You think to send the follow-up text, and maybe you even do, but then you get that urge to send another follow-up one. You replay the conversation in your head, trying to find the sentence that would have landed better. Sometimes people misunderstand us because they're human. sometimes because they aren't listening, and sometimes because they don't want to understand. None of those are invitations to abandon ourselves to fix it. We are allowed to say, let me think about it. As a daughter, you've gotten very used to making decisions around other people's comfort instead of your own. But here's what's true more often than not. We don't always actually know the answer immediately. Sometimes we absolutely have to check in with ourselves first, and we need to be able to give ourselves permission to do that. Also, next up, I am allowed to ask for help before I'm drowning. Just like our daughter who started this conversation for us, all she wanted to do was to be able to sing. Nothing was on fire. No one was bleeding. She just wanted to sing. Somewhere along the way, so many daughters learn that asking for help is only acceptable when it's attached to suffering. But you are allowed to ask for help because something matters to you. You're allowed to ask for help because something brings you joy. Then I am allowed to honor my family without disappearing inside of it. For some of you, loving your family came with an unspoken expectation that your needs, your dreams, your preferences, or even your identity were always going to come second. Caring for yourself somehow meant caring less about them. And I don't think those two things have to be in competition with each other. I think it's possible to love your family deeply while also building a life that feels really true to you. I think it's possible to be grateful for where you came from without believing you have to stay exactly who everyone expects you to be. Next up, I am allowed to rest before I've actually earned it. You guys know this one well. I hear this one all the time from you. What happens for you the second you all sit down? Many of you immediately start making a list of everything you should finish first. But that's actually the old rule talking. Rest isn't something you win after enough productivity. It's just a part of being a person, and we all get to have it. Next, I am allowed to let the phone ring, or more so, I can even put it on silent. Every ringing phone is not a summons. Every notification is not your responsibility. Sometimes the most balanced and healthy thing you can do is finish what you're doing before deciding whether or not you even want to answer. Then I am allowed to leave someone else's discomfort with them. Oh my goodness, you guys, I love this one so much. It's helped me so much getting this and really getting it and knowing it in my bones has been really freeing for me. But also, gotta tell you, P.S., really fucking hard. You daughters were and are so often the emotional first responders in your families. Someone sighs, your mother gets quiet, someone looks disappointed, and suddenly you're scanning the room trying to figure out what happened and how to fix it. Before you jump in and do that rescue, I'm encouraging you to ask yourself one question. Did they actually ask for help? Because I think daughters, if you're anything like me, become so accustomed to noticing other people's emotional states that we stop noticing when we've quietly started to assign ourselves responsibility for them. Someone's in a bad mood, and before we know it, we're wondering if we caused it. One of your kids or another family member or a friend seems disappointed, and we're already editing ourselves or changing course. If someone goes quiet, suddenly we're working harder, explaining more, trying to smooth the whole thing over. I want you to notice how quickly your attention leaves you and goes to someone else. It's likely automatic. Their feelings become louder than your own. And what if you didn't do that this time? What if you noticed that they seemed uncomfortable and instead of immediately trying to solve it, you simply worked on letting them have their own experience? You can let another adult have their feelings and not make them your responsibility to manage. If they need something from you, they can ask. And this next one, deep breath, because it's challenging. But get this one, you guys. See if you can really take this one in. If you have hurt someone, they get to tell you. You don't have to say something before they do or start fixing something that they haven't even told you is broken. For so many daughters, this is one of the hardest permission slips to sign because it just feels wrong. It feels like you're failing someone. But maybe what you're actually doing is allowing them to carry what was always theirs to carry while you worked on staying connected to yourself instead of disappearing into them. This is probably a whole podcast conversation unto itself. So maybe we'll just keep talking about it next week too. We'll see. Here's what's next. I am allowed to make a decision without first seeking everyone's blessing. Some of you have gotten so used to checking with everyone else before making a decision that you've stopped noticing that you're doing it. You poll your friends, you ask your siblings, you think about what your mother would say, what your partner would say, what everyone else might say. And then somewhere in all of that, your own voice ends up getting quieter and quieter. Now, there's nothing wrong with getting advice. Y'all got to keep doing it. So it's keeping me in business. But what we don't want you doing is giving away your power or your autonomy away, and we certainly don't want this part, or we don't want to imply that you somehow don't know your own mind. At some point, healing asks you to trust that you can gather information, that you can listen to people you trust, and then you can make a decision because it feels right to you, not because everyone else approved it first. Then I am allowed to not know how I feel just yet. Full stop. You have spent so much of your life tracking everyone else's emotions that sometimes yours do tend to come in a little late, and that is okay. I don't know yet is actually a complete answer. Give yourself some time to catch up with yourself. Then I am allowed to buy the good stuff. Not because I worked hard enough today, not because they were on sale, not because I talked myself into why they're practical, just because they'll make Wednesday a little bit sweeter. Daughters get so good at justifying joy that we forget joy never actually asks to be justified. Then I am allowed to stop editing myself while I'm talking. You know that moment when you're halfway through a sentence and suddenly you kind of hear yourself starting to dial it back a little bit or soften it, or maybe you catch yourself adding more context, explaining why you feel the way you do before anyone can even question you. Just notice that tendency. Saying what you think, and then notice the thoughts that come to your mind with your safe people is important. And you're allowed to do it, my friends. Then next permission slip. I am allowed to ask for what I want before I've convinced myself I deserve it. If you are waiting to feel completely worthy before you ask, daughter brain is just going to keep moving the finish line. You'll tell yourself that once you're more confident, less anxious, more healed, more productive, less needy, then you'll ask. Then you'll believe you'll deserve it. But I don't actually think that's how any of this works. The more I do this work with daughters, the more I think we've gotten the order of all of this backwards. I don't think we can think ourselves into worthiness. I think we have to experience our way into it. I think we ask for the thing. We tell someone what we want. We let someone help us. We let ourselves take up just a little bit more room in a conversation than we did the last time. And then we discover something that there's no way we could have learned just sitting at home trying to convince ourselves that we were worthy enough. We discover that the world doesn't actually end. Sometimes someone says yes, sometimes they say no, and we survive it either way. Sometimes we realize that the only thing standing between us and the life we want was that we had been waiting for a feeling that was never going to be the thing that came first. Worthiness is actually what's waiting for us on the other side of showing up for ourselves. Then I am allowed to have preferences, even when they're inconvenient for someone else. Well, imagine that one. Notice how quickly I'd rather ends up getting translated into I'm making everyone's life harder. Those are not the same thing. Somewhere along the way, a lot of daughters learned that having a preference meant creating a problem. That if someone had to adjust, compromise, or even just consider what you wanted, that you were asking for too much. I also want you to notice how often you ask everyone else what they want before you've even checked in with yourself. Where do you want to eat? What movie do you want to see? What sounds fun to you? You daughters get so gosh darn good at reading the room that you answer those questions by scanning everyone else's faces before you've even asked yourselves. What if instead you just took a beat? What happens for you if instead of looking around the room, you ask yourself first? Your preferences, they're not always going to win, but they do get to exist. And every time you notice one, say it out loud and let it have a seat at the table. You're reminding yourself that you belong there too. And, oh my goodness, you guys, when I outlined this episode, I started with 10 permission slips and somehow we've ended up with like 15, I think. And the funny thing is here, I could see a whole other stack. I've been jotting them down as I've been talking and writing this whole thing for you. I also wanted to talk to you about how all of this, everything we've talked about today, really comes down to giving ourselves permission to take up space. That's the biggest permission slip of them all. And honestly, it was going to be one hell of a closer for this episode. But the more we've talked today, the more I realize I'm not done thinking about it yet. Because I think there's something really important on the other side of this permission bridge we're building together. Every permission slip we signed today asked you to take up a little bit more space in your own life. Ask for what you want. Have preferences. Rest. Let someone help you. Stop explaining. Let someone else be uncomfortable. The conversation I really ended up having with all of you today that I don't quite think I saw coming is really about becoming a little bit more visible and more yourself, out loud, on purpose. But I can tell you from experience, these things, they are not easy. They are not simple asks. They inevitably come with a catch. Because when we take up more space, people are going to notice. Some people are going to love it. Some will root for you, and some won't. Many will have opinions. And yes, some will get mighty uncomfortable with all of it. And P.S., I'm not just talking about your narcissistic mothers when I say that. I'm talking about people. People have opinions all the time about what we should do, what we shouldn't do, who we should be, how available we should be, how accommodating we should be. That's just always going to be part of living in the world. And I don't think the goal is to become someone who never cares what anyone thinks. I don't think that's particularly realistic, and I don't even think that's what healing is supposed to look like. I think the work is learning to stay with yourself when someone else is uncomfortable. We have to remember that their reaction doesn't automatically mean we did something wrong. And PS2, or are we at PPS by now? Anyone else do that back in the day? We get to sign the permission slip anyway. I have a few more thoughts about that, and honestly, I do want to think them through before I bring them to you, because I think there's something really important inside of this conversation. So let's keep talking. I'm going to be back next week to pick this conversation up where we left off. But for now, please remember that all of you are in this incredible community of women from around the world who are finding their way together. All of you are signing your own permission slips. All of you are figuring out what it means to build a life that feels more like your own. All of you are in this together, and I, for sure, most definitely, am in it with you too. Bye for now. Talk to you again next week. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you felt seen, understood, and a little less alone in whatever it is you're carrying. The things we talk about here, your mother wound, trauma, identity, and healing, well, they were never meant to be worked through alone. Understanding matters, of course it does, but healing happens inside of relationship. That is one of the biggest things I have learned over the years of having these conversations with all of you daughters. It's also why I created Mayhem Daughters. Mayhem Daughters is my private online community for daughters of narcissistic and emotionally limited mothers. It's where the conversation continues after the episode ends. It's where daughters connect with one another, ask questions, receive support, and practice the work of healing together. Every week, we gather for Thursday Night Mayhem, our live community gathering. And throughout the week, daughters support one another inside a space built specifically for this kind of work. Because there comes a point when another podcast episode isn't actually what you need the most. Sometimes what you need is a place where you don't have to explain yourself so much, where you're understood, and where you can stop doing this work alone. That's what we've built inside of Mayhem Daughters. You can learn more at mayhemdaughters.com/community. If today's conversation resonated with you, please consider sharing it with another daughter who might need it. Your shares and reviews help more women find these conversations. And if you have a story, a question, or a reflection of your own, I'd love to hear from you. You can send me a message at heather@mayhemdaughters.com. And lastly, a heartfelt thank you to Heather Clark. She edits the show and has had my back for nearly a decade. There are very few people who have witnessed as much of Mayhem's evolution as she has, and I'm deeply grateful to have her beside me as I do this. This isn't just a podcast, it's a community. We see you, we believe you, and you already belong. And I'm so very glad you're here.